Well, the early National Signing Day has come and gone. Christmas has now concluded for everybody. And we are here for episode 152 of Huskers Live. Thanks for joining, us. I say us. Me. I'm here for episode 152 of Huskers Live. Mark is over handling, as Mark doesn't really sleep much, handling his live stream on a different channel. So I'm going to be running the show here today with y'all, going over a little bit of kind of what I went over, some of the stuff I went over in my recap of the 2024 class as it currently sits. We'll go over a little bit of some changes in the roster, what the roster size is looking like, and what we can anticipate going into the actual National Signing Day coming up in January. Not a whole lot of movement probably going to happen, but we'll get into that a little bit here. So first things first, for those of you that have joined us before, my name is Justin Adams. I am the post-game host / content creator here at Nebraska Football, the Voice of College Football. We are here every Tuesday live bringing you the show here. So join us every single week right here. And, we'll bring you the latest and greatest in Husker football, which is going pretty well right now. So I'll click up this bottom part here. Cool. All right. So welcome in everybody again. I hope everybody had a great Christmas and coming up on the New Year. So I hope everybody had a safe holiday, spent a lot of good time with your family, had a lot of good food, got a lot of good gifts and stuff like that. So as we know, the 2024 signing day was very, very drama-free, which is something we like to hear. It's one of those national signing days that we didn't expect a whole lot of chaos, but there are a lot of instances where we don't expect a lot of chaos. Chaos happens. We were lucky this time. Everything was pretty much signed, sealed, delivered by the time the morning ended before the press conference. So no surprises coming out of the early National Signing Day. So getting into a little bit of the recap of the signing day as people pile in here. My overarching thoughts on a successful early National Signing Day was, just kind of seeing how the staff attacked this signing day. Were they able to close the deal on the guys that they were supposed to close the deals on? We had very few people going into National Signing Day that were kind of on the fence that we were trying to just get on the dotted line, to officially commit. There was 3 in general that we're going to talk about. And all 3 of those signed. So that in and of itself is a good sign. We've talked about before just the relationships that Matt Rule builds with players, with the coaches, with the fans. And a lot of that was evident in the success that they had in this early National Signing Day. So for all intents and purposes, probably the best one in recent memory as far as just everything going to plan. Since then, there hasn't been a whole lot of roster churn. The most latest news was just, Marcus Washington. Not sure if he was unable to get his waiver or what happened there, but Marcus Washington declaring for the NFL draft. So, the receiver room, again, which was already kind of in flux, not a lot of numbers there, is still something that needs to be addressed. And it's, not a lot of people. There's only a handful of guys left in the portal at the wide receiver position. Fleming, it's looking like he's going to go elsewhere. So I'll get into that a little bit more. And then towards the end of it, I'll get into y'all's comments and stuff like that. So drop your comments and questions in here, and then we'll go over that here in just a little bit. So overarching thoughts again, I won't touch on it too long. The 2024 class finished, I believe, 19th on one of the, depending on where you look, 24/7 rivals on 3, whichever one is your preference, you're probably going to get a different ranking. However, for all intents and purposes, top 25 class. That's the biggest thing. You can split hairs with a lot of these rankings. I know a lot of people have asked questions. What puts, players over the threshold of a 3-star, 4-star, 5-star? Why did Kalen drop from 4-star to 3-star? Why did On3 drop Raiola from a 5-star down to a 4-star? And a lot of that stuff gets so nuanced that it's outside of our purview. So for instance, camps. If a player has a lot of visibility in camps, they tend to actually get a higher rating. They're getting more of themselves out there because these ratings are changing so rapidly. It's almost an out of sight, out of mind thing, to where when these guys are getting a visual of the player in these camps or the player during the season, they're using those things to base their rankings off of it. It happened with Fedoni. I know Fedoni was a borderline 5-star. Fedoni wasn't. I know camps had a lot to do with his ranking being 4-star versus 5-star. But once we get to that split in the hair point, they're fringe 4-stars. Danny Kalen, for instance, 4-star, 3-star, whatever you want to call them. They're talented players. Nebraska has a top 25 class. The biggest thing besides, stars that we want to look for, what is the message that the staff is sending, and what is the style of recruiting, and how does that indicate what the future state of the team is going to look like? So we'll get into that a little bit more specifically. The offense is probably the one that most people want to wonder about. And now with, Chubba Purdy's departure, albeit probably unexpected based on how the coaching staff was talking, will Nebraska add another portal QB? Okay, so first things first, getting into Matt Rule's press conference. Matt Rule, for somebody who's brand new to the NIL, we had a condensed offseason last year with Matt Rule and staff coming in, but for somebody who really was just back in the college rankings, the NIL was kind of turning into the Wild Wild West as the years go on. And now with the approval of the multi-year, transfer thing where you can get approved to play after multiple transfers, it's getting way and way more dicey. It's getting a little bit crazier. So the ability to go in and not only have a successful national signing day, but have a successful national signing day in today's modern college football world where nothing is set in stone. Nothing goes the way it should go. There's chaos everywhere. And I think that has a lot to do with just the organization and the buy-in from everybody on the staff. They're all pushing the same message, right? Everybody is exactly on the same page. And I know when Rule came in, he brought a lot of guys that he was close with, he was comfortable with. And I think this is the reason, he had guys, Satterfield at Baylor. He had, he's had connections with a lot of these guys. He brings a lot of former players in to be on his staff. I think a lot of that has to do with what we saw on National Signing Day. And that is when everybody is moving in the same direction, everybody's pushing the same message. Not a lot of things can go awry. He is very detail oriented, crosses his eyes. Well, I hope he's not crossing his eyes, but dots his I's, crosses his T's, however the saying goes. That was evident because the staff, when we send them to recruit certain players, let's say you send an offensive line coach, say you send Raiola, or let's say you send, Evan Cooper, right? Depending on who you send out to these guys, the messaging has to be the same. And a lot of times where things go south is when the messaging gets confused somewhere, lost in translation somewhere by the wayside, when these guys are communicating with multiple people from multiple members of the staff, et cetera, and they're not getting the same messaging. He mentioned Evan Cooper's ties in Florida. He's very methodical in how he, sets up the war room and how he approaches the recruiting. One big key in this 24 class that I think is going to be consistent going forward based on the offers that we've already seen put out for 2025, heavy recruiting in Texas, heavy recruiting in Florida. Matt Rule mentioned that he likes the way the guys in Florida play the game of football. They have fun, relaxed. Me personally, I don't know much about, I'm from Texas, so I don't know much about the Florida high school football scene, but that's something that there's something in there that he sees. And it's no secret that, the top two states for NFL talent as it sits with the current NFL rosters are Texas and Florida. Now, 2025 class, Texas and Florida, as it sits right now, are the two states that we have the most offers out for. So That's going to be a trend going forward, getting Texas back in as a pipeline state, because that was huge in the Big 12 days. Texas is one of those states that we recruited heavily from in the Big 12 days, and that was something that we kind of lost in the transition over the Big 10, and that's where a lot of our recruiting base suffered. So it's exciting to see us recruiting back in those states with the big competition, and being able to out recruit some of the big schools in those states. Texas and Florida have a ton of schools, in the states themselves. Speaking of homegrown talent, the state of Nebraska, 32%, I believe, of this class was from the state of Nebraska. And we had seen it as low in 2019, I believe. I think it was 2019, 8% of the class was from the state of Nebraska. I could be wrong on the year, but I went back and analyzed 2019 to 2023. 32% this year was the highest we've had in the previous 5 years. And again, the lowest was 8%. Recruiting within your immediate area is important, because not only does it give you, those guys that are close to home. You're not getting those guys plucked from other schools, because Nebraska and the surrounding area, it's very good for offensive linemen, etc. But the other thing it does is it builds the longevity. Those are the type of guys that are going to stick with the program for those aren't the guys that are immediately going to hit the portal. Look at Daniel Kalen, for instance. Daniel Kalen coming in as a Nebraska kid, Nebraska fan, right? He wanted to be here. He wanted to stay in the face of adversity. Raiola, 5-star, coming in and kind of stealing the thunder of the QB spot in this class. But Kalen is a Husker through and through. And that's case in point right there, why it is important to recruit guys from the immediate area and those guys that are close to home, because those are the guys that are going to be the building blocks for this roster moving forward. And those are going to be the guys that are going to be with us in the long haul. So, outside of that, the 1890, I touched on that briefly, 1890 Collective. If y'all have not followed them on Twitter, give them a follow, go check them out. The 1890 Collective doing a great job. They meet with these players and stuff like that. And the 1890 is the NIL. And it's super important. So if y'all want to go follow them on Twitter, you can donate. They have the links there to donate and stuff like that moving forward for the NILs. We know that's the key right now in the college football world. Okay. Let's get into the QB position a little bit. Looking at 2024, with Chubba Purdy's departure, it's looking a little scary in there. 3 quarterbacks, Harburg. Well, Sims technically hasn't decided where he's going to go yet, but I would have to imagine Sims is out. So the question here becomes, with having 2 true freshman quarterbacks, and then we have Heinrich Harburg, who unsure of, do they want to keep him at quarterback right now? It feels like they would have to. I know we talked about before, maybe moving positions around. That's something else about the Matt Rule Satterfield offense I'll get into in just a little bit. But the hard part here becomes getting a quarterback in the equation that is willing to come in and essentially be a backup, sit behind, a 5-star freshman who, for all intents and purposes, is the favorite to win the job. Chubba Purdy was probably the guy that I would think would have pushed him the most as far as competition goes, but he's out of the picture now. So you're going to have to try to find a guy late in this equation that may come in and be comfortable being a backup, but at the same time, he's going to need to be somebody that if the ball is put in his hands, it can't be a disaster like it was last year. It's going to be very, very hard to navigate for them to find that type of guy. We had mentioned before, there was a lot of people talking about Casey Thompson. Again, I don't think there was anything ever there with Casey Thompson. Casey Thompson was graduating and stuff like that. And Casey Thompson it's been reported that he is, not coming back, not interested. It didn't make a whole lot of sense from the start. The context clues that people were putting out, I get it, but The way things ended with Casey Thompson don't indicate to me that that's a relationship that's gonna be brought back and that's gonna just kind of, you know, and Casey wants to probably go somewhere that he can play and play immediately. And, although he's in his 7th year, not sure what his future holds for him, whether he wants to go in the draft or not, but that's something that he still probably has to think about. So, what do we know? Um, Going into, the roster construction and what we can anticipate potentially adding here come January. As it sits right now, Nebraska is at 95, um, 94, 95 out of 85 scholarships. So still a little bit over on the numbers. So there's still going to have to be some movement there. So we got to keep that in mind. Right now, Nebraska is set to bring in Dante Dowdle out of Oregon. Now, Dante Dowdle, big physical running back. He was a top 10 running back in the 2023 class in Oregon and averaged over 5 yards a carry, albeit in limited action. Now, Dowdle is, one of those guys that I think we can start seeing the trends of what this offense is going to be looking like going forward. I've talked about the Marcus Satterfield offense in the previous live, but just to give you a little more context, again, Satterfield is very much he's the guy that wants to establish a very, very physical run game, right? And then use that to establish the deep ball. What we saw this previous season, because we didn't have a roster that could connect on the deep ball, was a lot of short, mid intermediate passing type of situations. And that isn't what this offense is going to look like moving forward, nor is it what they want it to look like. The problem in lies here is that we were looking at this offense as, okay, we need to find somebody to fit what they were trying to run last year. And what they were trying to run last year was kind of a patchworked version of what they had to go with. They didn't have the personnel to run the offense. They didn't have the skill sets to run the offense that we wanted to run last year. So this offense this year is going to look completely different in terms of trajectory and how it operates. Looking at, Carolina, in Carolina, Marcus Satterfield's offense, 4,100 yards, 4,100 yards, 1,700, 4,100 passing yards, 1,700 rushing yards. At Baylor, 265 passing yards to 165 rushing yards per game. So it's a very balanced offense, but it's a pass-oriented offense. But you got to use that run game to set up the pass game. And right now, with the way that the running back room's looking, they are going to need to probably add a key contributor there, somebody who can come in, and they want to split the workload a little bit, as we can see. Not necessarily committee, but they want each guy to be able to do their own thing. Talking about each person doing their own thing, that's another key point that Rule alluded to when discussing this class and when discussing the offense in general. What Rule and Satterfield like to do, and this was indicated multiple times, they mentioned the San Francisco 49ers style of offense, that Shanahan style of offense. And what that is, and they call it a positionless style of offense, right? To where you can have, and he mentioned specifically Carter Nelson, Carter Nelson coming in, running 4th and 1 and running, for a short yard situation, having these guys move around and mix around offense and defense. The defense was already doing that. As we saw last year, you got gift playing at every level. You have your jack in the 3-3-5, you have your jack and you have your rover. Each jack and the jack and the rover are both guys that just move everywhere. Whether they're going to be down at the line of scrimmage, whether they're going to be in the linebacker, whether they're going to be in the secondary, those guys are moving everywhere. And I'll get a little bit into that whenever I touch on the defensive side of the recruiting. But on the offensive side of the ball, these running backs and wide receivers are going to be asked to do a lot of different things. So, adding another running back and another receiver are paramount in this class. And Dowdle fits exactly what they want to do. And Dowdle is going to be one of those guys that can come and he's going to be a game breaking type of player. Again, saw flashes at Oregon. You watched the little bit that he did play, looked really good. His film in high school, though, it's excellent. The dude is a physical runner. He can get downhill quickly. And, he's big body guy, 6'2", 220. So one of those guys that he's going to be a welcome addition to this team, but it's going to be another thing where it can open up some of these other guys, to move around the field. And it's not like, the more numbers that we have at the running back and receiver room, the more different things that we can do with these guys. We're not going to be hamstrung to having, hey, we have 3 running backs on the roster. We can't move these guys around. So that's why adding these numbers are going to be important. Now, Jamal Banks, a wide receiver from Wake Forest, is the latest in terms of wide receiver offers. And he has an official setup. I believe both are visiting the weekend of January 5th. So Dowdle and Jamal Banks, both are January 5th. Dowdle running back, Banks wide receiver. Banks, 1,600 yards over his career. I think over 600 the last couple seasons. He's a big body, physical guy. Probably a true X receiver, which is what Nebraska's kind of missing. Malachi Coleman, big body on the outside, yes, but Malachi extremely inexperienced. So they're going to need not only, a true X receiver, but somebody with experience who can come in and kind of lead these guys. Right now, very, very young room. And there's nothing wrong with that in terms of just, having a team that you can build on for multiple years, but losing a guy like Marcus Washington, right? And I know Marcus Washington in his career at Nebraska, it wasn't anything crazy. He was banged up a lot of the time, most of the time, most of last year. But what Marcus Washington brought was experience and leadership. And that's something that's going to be missing from this room next year. On top of that, just not a lot of numbers to begin with. So, Jamal Banks is probably going to be a key to land. Full court press are going to be on these two guys. And it's almost in a way a good thing that Nebraska, that we don't have the numbers to be able to go after 10 guys, because right now the focus needs to be on these guys, and the staff can put the full court press on these two guys, similar to what they did with Raiola. They locked Raiola into the class, and then they were able to quickly flip, and they had the 3 cornerbacks from Florida that they were also able to get on National Signing Day. I'll touch on them a little bit when I get to the defense. So Fleming, I think I saw a question about Fleming in here. Like I said, I'll go over y'all's questions in a little bit. Did we for sure miss on Fleming? So Fleming's about as a lock to Penn State as it can get. Unfortunate for us, but the writing's been on the wall. And Fleming posted a picture today or yesterday of his new Christmas toy. And it was a Dodge Ram. It had the sticker on the back of the dealership. Somebody cross-referenced the dealership. The dealership pulled up as an official partner of Penn State University. They bought him a truck. He's got the truck in hand. He's probably gone. Yeah, Fleming, and further indicated, that's just kind of one of those funny little things that we found out about it. But more so indicating that Fleming was out of the picture was getting Jamal Banks the offer on December 23rd and then getting him to campus. I think Fleming was the kind of what they were waiting for, the piece in that they were kind of waiting for, just to see, what may happen before they brought somebody else in. But once they kind of saw that, or once they were informed of what's probably to come, the offer was dropped to Jamal Banks on December 23rd, and the official was set. So yeah, Fleming is pretty much out of the picture. And I think that pretty much puts a kibosh on, what we're talking about before, where it's like, when people said Kyle McCord and Fleming were a package deal, that was never the case. Again, in the NIL business, it's what it is now. It's a business. In the NIL and college football business, there's no package deals anymore, man. These guys are looking for their own money. These guys are looking for their own opportunity. It's package deals are behind us. So yeah, Fleming's looking like he's going to be over to Penn State. So our focus shifts to Jamal Banks, and I'm not upset with it. Banks, looking at his films, great wide receiver. I'm not going to say I'm the most familiar with the Wake Forest wide receiver core, but just in doing my research and looking recently, he will be a really good addition, not only on the field, but in terms of just leadership and morale in that locker room, and just numbers in general. Okay, moving over to the defensive side of the ball. The three players that were flipped early National Signing Day: Vincent Shavers, Larry Tarver, Amari Sanders. And then, of course, we had the Bly Hill, who transferred. Vincent Shavers, Larry Tarver, and Amari Sanders both are all three secondary defensive back guys. Now, talking about positionless players, one of the biggest things in looking at this class that kind of stood out, is very, very, very deep as far as defensive backs go. And why is that the case? Well, the thing about Matt Rule classes that we're starting to learn is you can't necessarily just look at the number of, offers and, commitments from position by position. Those guys are going to move. Essentially, Matt Rule likes to recruit on ability, size, and he likes athletic lineage. He likes people who come from athletic families. So, and listening to him talk, what he wants, some of these bigger defensive backs and some of these even smaller edge rushers, he wants these guys to be able to, move into kind of a linebacker-ish role, and then we have the guys that are, the Vincent Shavers, who are a little bit on the smaller side, the $160, $175. Those guys are probably going to be your prototypical defensive backs, 6'2", the long rangy guys. And then he's going to probably have some of these bigger, stockier guys moving around in the jack and the rover position. And the X, Willis McGade's fourth, is one of those guys that I believe is going to be the jack, from what I read. And that's part of the 3-3-5 defense. There is no, you're not able to look at this and be like, okay, we have 10 cornerbacks. No, those 10 cornerbacks, 5 are going to play linebacker, 5 are going to play cornerback. Okay. So Vincent Shavers, Larry Tarver, Amari Sanders, getting those guys was key, because not only do they cement the staff's footprint in the state of Florida, all three of those guys, I believe, from the Miami area, but, going 3 for 3 on, the last 3 guys you need on early National Signing Day, and having that momentum going into the late National Signing Day is going to be very, very important for the staff, because, coming out of last year and especially with the quarterback position the way it was, that probably puts a lot of pressure on this staff to get this right. This offseason, they had to get right. It wasn't one of those things where Matt Rule, we know Matt Rule's a slow builder and stuff like that, but Matt Rule, from the talk, he doesn't have a 5-year timeline, from the fans, media, nobody. This is essentially year 2. Believe it or not, as surprising it is, year 2's make or break for Matt Rule, and because of just how much of a disaster it was last year in terms of handpicking the quarterback. The one thing that he got wrong last year was the most important position on the field. And so, coming out of that and being able to get momentum going in this class and being able to hit on most every single one of these guys that they wanted is very, very important, but it's also a good indication for Nebraska moving forward in the 2025 class. Getting Raiola, to me, is the biggest possible thing that could have, not only just because he's a 5-star quarterback and we were a quarterback away, just knowing how difficult it would have been to be able to bring in a guy like a Dante Dowdle or a Jamal Banks or even a Fleming, and trying to recruit them into this offense, just by what the offense looked like last year. And again, we're in business. Like, this is a business now. These guys, each and every single year is more important for them now, because each single year is money and an opportunity for more money, right? So looking at the offense last year, if we would have come into the, National Signing Day or come out of this class with maybe our quarterback room basically retained and no big movement, we don't get Raiola, we don't get a McCord, those type of things, this offense would have been almost impossible to recruit to. So we should see, hopefully, that impact immediately whenever these two guys come to campus, because now we have a system in place to where we can point at an offense and be like, here's what we're trying to work towards. Here's what we have at quarterback. And, here's what we have to look forward to. Whereas before, we didn't have that. Part of the issue, it wasn't really an issue. It was one of those things that we knew that Raiola peer recruited heavy to Georgia, right? But Nebraska got back in the picture so late in the game, there wasn't really enough time for him to peer recruit over here. Well, now this is the opportunity. These two guys right here, this is going to be the key. And I don't know if we get Dante Dowdle if we don't get Raiola in. I don't know if we even get a visit. That stuff was springboarded off of the Raiola news and kind of all of the momentum Nebraska had. So, okay, getting over into the defensive side, like I said, what can we anticipate with this defense going next year? 8 of 11 starters coming back. Again, that is key because a lot of these young guys, for instance, last year, right? A lot of these young guys hit the field last year in the class. I looked through the recruiting class of the 2023 class, I believe it was. If you look at the actual classes themselves, the 2023 class probably had the most people play of any class of the last 4 years. And, that isn't only just because, they fit Matt Rule's style and, some of them are his guys and stuff like that. Well, looking at, the previous year's class and in terms of just retention, right? Those classes for all intents and purposes, top 25, whatever. But look at the names in those classes and tell me how many of them are on the roster right now. Okay. And that is the reason why so many of those saw the field in 2023. Now, without a lot of these guys hitting the portal, what that now does is it means these guys are going to be able to come in and actually get developed. They're not going to have to trial by fire, hit the field like we saw this last year. That's what it was. A lot of these guys had to develop on the field as they played. Now we're going to start to kind of see that footprint and the development come along and see what these coaches are capable of. Offensive line. I know offensive line was a big question mark coming into the year, and people are still hit or miss on the offensive line. Carter Nelson and Grant Bricks, we had Carter Nelson tight end, Grant Bricks offensive lineman, those two, huge to this class. Grant Bricks probably being the crown jewel of this class. Now, looking at the breakdown of the numbers of how many linemen we have. So we had 12 freshmen going into this year, 4 sophomores, 4 juniors, and 1 senior, right? Now, getting into a little bit of the PFF numbers. So I kind of broke down some of our offensive line numbers so we can kind of look at some of the development, with what we have here. So going from 2022 to 2023, 64.2% of the starters returned from 2022. So, only 64%. And then, like I said, coming into next year, 12 freshmen, 4 sophomores, 4 juniors, and now 4 seniors. But the offensive line improvement. Now, I went back and looked at 2021, and I looked at 2023. Okay, just looking at 2021, the offensive line gave up 159 pressures total. In 2023, it gave up 89 pressures. Okay. Now, there are many other factors that go into this. Of course, the games, probably less snaps in the games now with all the media timeouts, but that is a significant drop, right? Most improved, Bryce Benhart, going from 39 pressures on 384 pass attempts to 24 pressures, went from 5 sacks to 4 sacks, very similar, but still 4 hits to no hits. And he went from a 23 pass block grade to a 69.8. So, there's marketable improvements. Corcoran still struggled. Turner Corcoran, 60 pressures, to 16, but however, he was cut back significantly on the amount of time he saw the field on passing snaps. Best pass blocker being Justin Evan Jenkins this past year. In Nebraska, looking at the numbers, Ben Scott, overall 63.8 PFF grade. Ethan Piper, 63, New Ely, 62.8. And when looking at these numbers, the 60s to 70 range, that's it's a little bit below average, and I would say probably right at average is around, upper 65 to 70, and then above average, above 70, above 70. So it's still something that needs to be improved. And, we were better run blocking for the most part than pass blocking. However, there are signs that this offensive line is improving. And I know that's, a lot of people have a hard time seeing that. It's really hard to quantify it. And it's still hard to quantify it. Even looking at the numbers, you have a different amount of snaps from year to year. You have a different rotation of players from year to year, a different style of offense from year to year. But just looking at big picture, the offensive line has improved. So that's something that we should, really be happy with going into next year, and really be confident in Raiola, not, just because he got Dylan in here, but because of his ability to develop has been showing. And so, not lost on this class. I didn't want to lose track of the offensive line, because again, that's our biggest question mark going into each season. That was our biggest question mark going into this previous season. And so just for some signs of optimism there, but that is another reason why, getting a guy like Dante Dowdle will be doable. When you're able to, put offensive line out there and show improvement year by year, that's the type of guys you're going to be able to bring in. And again, he was a top 10 running back in the 2023 class. He's not some, scrub. He's a very, very good running back who was just a freshman. And I believe he lost his red shirt. I think he played a little bit more than 4 games. So, all right. Let's move back over to the defensive side of the ball. Okay. So, defense, again, returning 8 of 11 starters. We had 9 defensive backs in total, I believe. 9 defensive backs in total. And I think about half of those are going to be split between kind of linebacker, edge rusher. And I think some of the edge guys are going to be moving to linebacker. Some of the cornerbacks are going to be, about half those are going to be moving to linebacker. So outside of them, looking at the 2025 offers so far, majority cornerback and offensive line. Again, also majority Texas and Florida. It's just that's been the trend, and that's going to be the trend going forward. Texas and Florida are going to be heavily recruited. Defensive backs, offensive linemen, defensive linemen, those are going to be recruited heavily. So another thing that I talked about, athletic profile. Matt Rule has the proof's in the pudding. You look at some of these guys, 24/7 profiles, and look at their, read up on them and stuff like that. And what you notice is the majority of this class actually either has some kind of ties to, a former high level player, whether it be an NFL player or a college player. Case in point, I'm drawing a blank on his name. Oh man, from Buford, Georgia, one of Raiola's offensive linemen put an offer in for him. And he's son of Brandon Jacobs, though. NFL running back Brandon Jacobs. You got Willis McGahee the fourth. But on top of that, you have guys like, I believe it was Vincent Shavers, who has a sister. And I don't know if it was Vincent Shavers. One of the 3 people had a sister who plays, volleyball in college. Another one, his mom played volleyball. Another one, his dad played. He likes not only guys with athletic profiles as far as lineage, but he likes multi-sport athletes. And over half this class was dual sport athletes. One of them, I believe it was Vincent Shavers, might have been, didn't even play his first year of varsity football until 2022. And the guy's a borderline 4-star recruit. So those are the type of guys, the diamonds in the rough, that Matt Rule wants to bring in here and develop into these 5-star caliber type of players. And so looking at reading the tea leaves and stuff like that, we can sit here and we can point at class rankings. We can look at the players individually. We can look at, but the thing is, as we know with recruiting, we don't know until we get them on the field and we see them on the field. So what we can start to look at is trends, and you can start to see why Matt Rule is a builder versus a flipper, and why he's been successful at that. Because even in today's modern college football world of NIL, he wants to bring these guys in who have developmental attributes, who come from a history of athletes, and that he can turn into the type of players that he wants. Again, he talked about that with the quarterback position, not wanting to get a guy in here for just one season. He wants to get a guy in for multiple years. And I think he's going to be one of the old school guys in the modern NIL world where recruiting is still such a big part of what he does and part of his message. So, yeah. So just overall, great signing day, early national signing day. We have Jamal Banks Dowdle coming in to look forward to in January. And I'll start to get in some of y'all's comments here. So I appreciate you watching for the Philippines. Saw that earlier. Appreciate you, everybody who stopped in here. If y'all don't mind, it really helps us out. I hate to ask for likes, but YouTube don't like me otherwise. So if y'all don't mind dropping a like on the stream, really helps us out here. It really helps me out. So, and much appreciated. And I appreciate everybody who's normally in here. Doesn't matter who stars you got. Sorry, I'm just trying to make sure that I can answer y'all's questions if I see them. One streamer pointed out our line wasn't so bad and that QB's unnecessary ran out of the secure pocket. Very much so. One of the things that you notice when looking at Dylan Raiola's film, right? Dylan Raiola is a pro-style quarterback where he's pass first, pass second, right? And it's not because he can't run. He's athletic. Danny Kalen, same thing. He's athletic. He can run. But what Matt Rule alluded to in his presser, and, he likes these two big body quarterbacks because he mentioned the wind and the wind whipping in Memorial Stadium and having an arm to be able to push the ball deep down the field, even in, those winds whipping around. Because if your offense is built around the ability to use the deep ball, you don't want to lose that just because, the weather's a little bit awry one day. You need a guy who can still push the ball down the field and have enough velocity of I just said velocity and philosophy in the same word. Velocity to get the ball down the field accurately to the receiver. So what we had last year, was a run first, run second type of quarterback room. And that put the offensive line in a bunch of terrible situations. Yeah, essentially, and for anybody who's played football, they kind of know, but your blocking assignments are your assignments for a reason. It's not one of those things where the offensive line is identifying somebody who's unblocked and just getting that person, right? You have an assignment, okay? So, and your back, the quarterback's behind you. So you have to not only be able to block your guy, right? Be on the lookout for any stunts, right? Be ready to alert the quarterback if anybody's getting him. But you also have to be mindful of where he is, not hold. There is so much going on at the offensive line position. So when you have a quarterback who's, first read's gone, I'm moving, right? Well, then you have no idea what is going on behind you on any given play. And it really leads to the lineman kind of thinking more than just playing, right? And I've talked about this before. When you're thinking instead of just reacting based on your instincts, that really makes your job 10 times harder. And especially with the offensive line, you can't see what's going on behind you. So, and more specifically to this point, I did see a stat earlier, and I don't want to quote the stat specifically, but it was a Jeff Sims stat and talking about how the right side of the offensive line underperformed when Jeff Sims was that quarterback. Well, there was a reason for that. It's because Jeff Sims tended to just scramble right. And so, to your point, that's very true. It's one of those things that the quarterback needs to put the offensive line in the good position, just like it's vice versa. I don't think a lot of people account for that enough. There's tight ends we're missing the blocks more than the line. That's interesting. Yeah, and I mean, we'll see. We'll see how that blocking comes along because we do have a couple of guys. Fedoni is probably more of a pass catching type of guy, and we had Austin Allen, and so hopefully we can see some of these tight end blocking develop because that's what Satterfield likes to do. He likes to run 2 tight end sets. Satterfield huddle. He swears by huddle, and it's never going to go away. Satterfield is never going to get rid of huddling. It's the heart. He called it the heart and soul of football. He's not going to get rid of the huddle. And so what that means is the tight ends are going to be used, but the tight ends are going to be used in big sets, heavy sets to block, and that, and the third. So I think we can start probably anticipating that we're going to see more development as far as blocking goes from our tight ends as well. Getting O-line players from the JUCO ranks. So the thing about offensive line that's difficult is it's hard to build an offensive line through a transfer portal. There's a cohesiveness that needs to be there with an offensive line. There needs to be an understanding of the guy playing behind them with the offensive line. And that's one of those things that manifests only with experience and time together as a unit. Offensive line, more than any other, is one of those that needs to be built through recruiting and developed over time, as opposed to trying to patchwork an offensive line together through the portal. That makes it way more difficult to actually get that unit to play as one. It's not about just having talent. It's not about having 5 stars across the board. You have 5 stars that are just playing together for the first year on your offensive line. They're probably not going to be as successful as if you have 3 stars and 2 4-stars that have played together for 3 years, right? Offensive line is a unit, more so than any other unit, and it needs to be cohesive. So I think even more so, I like the system in place where we're going to recruit these guys and we're going to develop them, and then we can focus on the skill positions more so in the portal. Kid from Oregon, kid from Wake Forest. Oh yeah, I touched on them. Dylan Raiola is a starter right now. Absolutely. Yeah. And Daniel Kalen, great kid, great head on his shoulders, well-spoken, very intelligent guy, talented as all get out. But it's just the nature of the beast. When you're going against Dylan Raiola, they're going to help each other. They're going to push each other, and they're going to make each other better. But Dylan Raiola's, as it sits, yeah, he's going to be the guy. Well, as it sits, he's going to be the guy because right now there's nobody else coming in that's going to be able to be better than him, and there's nobody on the roster that can beat him out right now. Different Raiola didn't sound exactly. Let's see. Raiola can really turn this around. Winning 9 games next year. Class is going to be anything real easy. Yeah, and I think the schedule in a way plays in our favor because early the schedule's easy, and then as we get later in the season, the schedule gets a lot more difficult. We know that last 5-game stretch there is extremely difficult, but the early slate being the easier side of the schedule, that's going to give this young team time to kind of get their butts together. And the schedule actually in this instance kind of worked out that way, because we have a true freshman quarterback. So it worked out for the best. We're all looking at it kind of like, dang, like that's a rough final few games in the stretch there. But use this season as an example. The team and the freshmen, got better. The freshmen got better and developed as the season went along. And we saw, them making more plays as the season went along. So that development will be there to be had. But those guys are going to be sophomores now. Now we're going to have these true freshman kids coming in here, but you're not going to have a Michigan in week 4. You're going to have a little bit of an easier slate early. And then that way, as full strength as this team can be by the late games, they're going to be as developed and full strength as they can be by the late games. So, rest of the reads on the field, Sam Keller, Tanner Lee did. Yeah. And one of the biggest question marks again still is QB coach. Jeff Christensen, of course, is Raiola's personal QB coach. And y'all may have seen the video floating around of Dylan and Dayton with Jeff Christensen. Jeff Christensen, just a QB guru, Mahomes QB coach, not just Mahomes, but many other. And so, it'll be interesting to see what the plan is there. there were people hinting at maybe Christensen. There's, Adam DeMichelle, Peets. I haven't heard Pete's name since last year. Jake Peets, I haven't heard his name since last year. Jake Peets, of course, was the guy that we were after, and the reason why Satterfield ended up having to take the QB coach position was because we missed on Pete's late in the offseason. So, but not anything substantial that indicates one way or the other. So I'm not going to speculate too much on that, but I would imagine that we're still looking to bring one in. Eric Crouch, that's that jersey right there. It's not Scott Frost, guys. That's an Eric Crouch jersey. So that's my favorite Husker QB of all time. I think the line would do a lot better to QB. It's not running around confused. Exactly. And it helps, even having a guy that can stand strong in the pocket. Looking at Raiola's film, Raiola, even when he's taking hits and when he's going down to the ground, he is still throwing the ball, and he's still throwing the ball accurately. That's why I said he's pass first, pass second. We're going to see a lot less designed runs. There's still going to be design runs, but I don't think we're going to see much scrambling from him at all. It's going to be, he's going to stand in the pocket. He's going to, and standing in the pocket is key. As the comment mentioned earlier, because when you get outside of that pocket, that's when you start really putting your line in a tough situation. So not only are we going to see improvement in the offensive line because of the development, but yeah, him being in there and standing in the pocket, standing strong in the pocket at that, and still being able to deliver throws is going to be key. What's going on, Gavin? And go Big Red. Yes, go Big Red. So really make a difference. So this, and this is another thing here with the 5-star QBs every year really making a difference. So if we look at the more recent sample size, and when we talk about 5-star QBs, we're not just talking about a 5-star QB, right? Raiola was the number one player in the class. Okay. So looking at that from history, of course, Fields sat a year, but, Fields probably could have came and played immediately. I think less and less we're going to see those guys sitting, even in the world of NIL, because again, this is a whole different animal. These guys have money to make each and every season. Okay. So it's going to be one of those things that if they have to sit for a year, that's potential money out of their pocket. Whereas if they came and set the league on, or set the, college football world on fire, they're going to get endorsements. They're going to get this, that, and the third. I don't think we can just look at previous college football as an example anymore. Those days are behind us. As much as we hate to say it, those days are behind us, and it's a different game. And I think you're going to start seeing a lot more of these 5-star QBs coming and play. And let's be honest, Raiola is probably going to be able to come in and play very well year one. And it's one of those things that's like looking at our QB room last year and looking at what Raiola is going to be this year. It's, not going to be any worse. So, whether you roll a true freshman Daniel Kalen out there, whether you roll a true freshman Raiola out there, it's going to be an improvement. Neither of them are 5 stars. Probably going to make mistakes. Going to be growing pains. Yeah. And that's the thing, though, especially at the QB position. The only way you learn is by making mistakes. They'll have a cover 3 shell, right? And they're actually running cover 2. So you throw an interception. You think it's cover 3. Okay. Or let's say you think it's cover 2. So you try to throw a deep route up the middle of the field, right? But it's a shell and they were in cover 3. Boom. Now, okay, now I need to recognize that, okay, that's potentially a shell. It's everything from pre-snap reads on down to your receiver's tendencies. And that's stuff that can only be developed if they play. So, even if Raiola doesn't come out and light the world on fire year one, every mistake he makes in year one is going to make him that much better in year 2. So, I'm excited to have him running quarterback. Watching show from Nebraska, born in Fremont, Nebraska, moved to Omaha, Nebraska. Appreciate you being in here, Gavin. Any word on Dimas? So no, that one. So that was. I haven't heard anything about that. I don't know what happened with him. I know originally it was canceled because there was some kind of issue with a transcript, I believe. So no new news on that yet. That's kind of just the radio's silent on that. So we'll see. We'll see on if he, yeah, but the reason it was canceled, it wasn't anything to do with the staff or anything like that. That was more of a transcript issue that led to him not being able to visit because he wouldn't have been able to sign. So, Husker fan always, yep. I think he's losing. Will think a freshman could win 9 games of the mid-battle lines. It was a good QB experience, 1-3 more than games. Well, okay. So when comparison to Shadur and comparing, Colorado's offensive line was not just bad, but they were really bad. That they were undersized. And calling Shadur a good QB, yeah. I mean, I don't know how good Shadur actually is, to be honest with you. But to say it's delusional that a freshman can come in and win 9 games. Well, there was a formula put out there that has the college football teams, every single team, it randomized the play result of every single play for each individual game, and it came up with a win expectancy, right? So Nebraska, of course, has the worst mistakes and the worst moments. It took those out of the equation, right? Nebraska should have won 8 games based on that formula and how they played in the play result. Nebraska should have won 8 games last year with one of the worst QB rooms in college football, if not probably the worst QB room in college football. Not only that, another year of development, another year with the staff, 9 wins. I don't see how that's crazy to think that a true freshman can come in here and win 9 games, especially when you're returning 8 of 11 people on defense. Not only that, look at how minimal amount of players have hit the portal. How many key guys has this team lost in the grand scheme of things? So I don't think you can just say, oh, true freshman, not going to win 9 games. If you look at the team and you look at what we, the actual concrete evidence that we have, then that should be all you need to know that, hey, just even with a marginal improvement in the QB play, this team could have won 9 games last year. They should have won 8 games last year based on, just not shooting themselves in the foot. But can this O-line block for Raiola? Yes. Simple as that. Like we talked about earlier, they're going to make Raiola's life easier. He's going to make their life easier. They're going to develop, the proof is in the numbers, and I did run the numbers just to make sure it was an improvement. So I didn't just come on here talking, but there is an improvement year over year. The 2 seasons, with Raiola, there's an improvement, and we can anticipate that, to continue to improve moving forward. And the reason that, Raiola got the extension that he got and got the double in salary was because he was working hard and developing these guys. It wasn't because he got Dylan to come to Nebraska, as a lot of people thought. No, it was because of his work and how well he's done with this offensive line and improving it. And I think a lot of people are kind of hard on him. And I think a lot of people almost turned on him when Raiola didn't come the first time, because people thought the only reason that Matt Rule retained him in the staff, and that he was the only person that Matt Rule retained in the staff, was to get Raiola. That was what people were coming up with. And, it was because he's a good coach, and he got his extension, or he got his money because he's a good coach. So I do expect them to improve. And I think we're going to see a significant improvement next year, just because of having a better quarterback that's going to be able to stay in the pocket. Raiola stay if we don't go bowling again. Here's my thing with talking about Raiola. He's played 3 different high school, or been, 3 different colleges, 4 different high schools, whatever. When bringing all of that back to where we stood 2 weeks ago, right? And where we even stood when he committed to Georgia. How many teams was he deciding out of? He was deciding out of, Nebraska, Georgia, right? Okay. So they moved over to Georgia, anticipating that, Georgia was going to be the place that he wanted to go, of course. However, it's not like we know that was Dylan's decision to just move. It's not like Dylan wanted to move, necessarily wanted to. We don't know that, his dad is very much the shot caller in that. And Dylan is his own man, right? And we don't know necessarily that Dylan was the one that called those shots or whatever, but at the same time, it's not even an indication of what we should, correlation doesn't equal causation. And in this instance, it doesn't do that because he was down to 2 schools, right? One of those out of the picture because he already committed there and left, okay? So now he goes from it was between the team with the lineage of the family and the national championship dominant college football program. Where would he pivot to? Is my question. What is more enticing than the situation he's in now? Because in recent talks with him that and from what everybody's reported and stuff like that, and what Matt Rule said was this was Dylan. Matt Rule said that he stops recruiting guys for the most part when they commit somewhere else. That doesn't mean he ends a relationship, but he stops recruiting them, right? It wasn't him that contacted Dylan about coming to Nebraska. It was Dylan that contacted him. And Dylan talked about how it's in his blood and it's in his heart. And, in his poem, he's talking about, going from, here's this big powerhouse, blue chip after blue chip. And then, or I can go over to Nebraska and I could wake the sleeping giant. And there's no other program in college football that he can do that and shoot to superstardom like Nebraska. So I don't know of any incentive that he would have to go anywhere else or any leverage that anybody would be able to use to pull him elsewhere. I think Nebraska is where he's sitting. I think that's where he's staying. And I think we can feel confident in that. So there are many throws where I always film that I have never seen a Husker play. The dude, most of his film is deep balls. The dude can throw the ball 65, 70 yards accurately. And it's he has touch on his throws. But one of the things that he has the ability to do, and some players don't have the ability to do this, is they know when to take some steam off the ball. They know when to throw a fastball. He mixes up the timings of his throws. He mixes up the the velocity. He knows when to add a little bit of touch to the ball. And, that was evident in 33 touchdowns and 1 interception in Buford, Georgia, which is one of the, it's a nationally recognized school in Georgia, and Georgia's a very, very good state as far as high school talent goes. That was evident. It's the guy makes the throws, and it's not just wide open guys. He's throwing these balls into coverage, and they can only be had based on, his ability and his ability to not only just make the throws on target, but the ability to change up, like I said, the timing of the throws, the velocity of the throws, just watch a little bit of his film and you'll see what I'm talking about. No, I appreciate it, Gavin. Thanks for dropping in here. Terrified corn fan. I have no idea what that even means, but thanks for watching, Carly. Alone, buckle down. What's up, Tim? I appreciate it. Oh, Tim, I still need to reach out to you. My apologies. Him staying more focused and he won't be a successful future. While we're going 5-7 years and made bad. It does tell you scouts maybe aren't as good as advertised. Yeah. Yeah, but the thing is though, that's assuming, that if he goes 5-7, right? It's not necessarily, I don't think it's necessarily the record that would indicate that for him. I think it's how the season played out, right? Is it a 5-7 record because of injuries? Is it a 5-7 record because the talent just isn't there? Is it a 5-7 record because he made mistakes? And so just record alone, I think it would, I think it would severely take a lot for him to leave. And again, I don't know where else he would go. And for him, money is important, but he comes from a family of money and he's getting paid no matter where he goes. So I think for him, it's more important to him to see this through. And I think even if he struggles next year and the team struggles next year, I'm still 99% confident that he will be back, regardless. So it's 2024 season this year and make a bowl game. Exactly. That's the spirit. Does Nebraska need a transfer portal QB? That's the hard part right now. We do need a transfer portal QB. Yes. Will we be able to get one? Who knows? Again, we're in a situation where we have 2 5-star, well, a 5-star and a 4-star, three borderline 4-star quarterback. Trying to get a guy to come in and be like, okay, you're going to be backup tertiary option to these 2 guys. That's going to be difficult to get a guy in here. So it's one of those things. If we do get a guy, it's probably not going to be a guy who's going to be able to come in and win us a lot of games. but depth is the most important thing, and that's something we lack. So we absolutely have to go after somebody. And again, we're 10 spots over on the roster, 95 right now out of 85 spots. So we're still a little over on the numbers. So there's not going to be a whole lot of movement. So we'll see how that pans out. How about Tate Rodemaker if NU makes a transfer? I can get a little bit more into that later. I don't, yeah, I don't, I mean, it would be nice, but I don't necessarily know any kind of indication, nor have they indicated anything like that of any further transfers that they want to bring in. So that's something we can see in the coming days. And it's slim pickings right now. But wide receiver position, there's a handful of guys there. That's it left. So that's going to be the biggest thing coming into January is seeing if they do try to get a guy. But I don't think there's any way they ride out the QB room as it is right now with 3 bodies and 2 true freshmen. It's just that's not enough of a QB room to go into a season at all, especially in the day of transfer portal, NIL, et cetera. So, all right, guys. I appreciate everybody joining me, hanging out with me. Again, if you liked what we do here, please consider subscribing. Like the video if you like what we're doing here. I appreciate everybody who's in here each and every week. Thank you all for joining me. I believe Mark will be back with me next week. And so we'll be back right here Tuesday at 5 p.m. Mountain Time, 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central, bringing you the latest and greatest. Maybe we'll have some news on the quarterback front. But with that being said, join us here next time. And again, I'll be pushing probably some content with news as we get it. So just be on the lookout for that. Yeah, appreciate everybody joining us here at Husker Live again. And I will see y'all next week. Everyone have a happy New Year. Yeah, because what day is New Year's? It's over a week away. So everybody have a happy and safe New Year's. I hope everybody had a great Christmas, and I will see y'all next time. Peace.